than what we used to be. And man, I done heard this crap so many times. It's etched into my brain.
I'm tired of people dying when they didn't have to.
And still are. But anyway, let's move on. We got a few more videos left, 3 actually. So this is the video where I'm saying, now here comes the money. Here comes the money. And how it was spent. This is Clinton's.
During the Clinton administration, the Violent Crime Control Act allowed for over $9 billion to be allotted for prison construction in the U.S. and $8 billion for 100,000 police officers. There was also an expansion of the federal death penalty, mandatory minimum sentencing, and truth in sentencing incentives to encourage states to advocate for harsher punishments without parole. This is also when the 3 strikes provision was promoted in the United States. This meant that a defendant might get a life sentence for almost any crime, no matter how minor, if they had 2 prior convictions that were considered a violent offense. All of these policies created a huge increase in incarceration for nonviolent drug offenses, going from 50,000 in 1980 to 400,000 in 1997. A disproportionate amount of these incarcerated folks were Black Americans. And after all this, the war on drugs didn't even decrease drug use.
When you purposely, and it's funny that I have to keep repeating this over and over again because the same thing keeps happening over and over again. So what do you expect? You're not going to get brand new ice cream on crap. When you target a certain group of people, you're going to get them. Again, when you target, when you focused on a certain group of people, you are going to get them. These bills, these acts, whatever you want to call it or use it, was targeted. That was, and it did what it was meant to do. Make minorities the bad guys. Make minorities the reason why America is not great again. That was this point. Hell of a good, did real damn good. For what the purpose of it was, nobody knows, because if you was actually trying to be factual about it, the drug crime bill, the war on drugs, the war on crime didn't do jack shit. And I got a video on that too. But if you want to use that bull crap, let's use it then. It didn't do crap. Drugs didn't go down, crime didn't go down, nothing went down. Nothing got better. The only thing that got better was more cops, more prosecutor, more judges, more weapons. That was
I have an unpopular position that I know it'd be a little shocking to a lot of people, but a long time ago I heard someone say this to me, and I've taken it as pretty much as gospel. You know, racism is the poor man's war, right? And if you take that, and that can speak on so many different levels, but I'm gonna take it right here. Racism is the poor man's war. The real issue that continues to persist across America is poverty, access to resources, and who gets to control it. That's where it all lies. So if you look at it and you say, okay, why is it that Black people are disproportionately targeted by law enforcement? Yes, racism. Where do we get the racism from? Back in the 1600s, when they decided that we got to get the labor classes apart, and we got to say, hey, white people, no matter how bad you got it better than, I mean, you're still better than the Black people, no matter what they got, right? And so you pulled it apart, and racism was pretty much born out of that, in a manner of speaking, but it was still economically driven. And everything that has moved forward has continued to be economically driven. So racism has created a number of structures and constructs, which has pushed our people into poverty because we were blocked from the economic opportunities to move forward. We just had a show about the 40 acres and a mule. Had that actually been taken care of, if that had actually been enforced, then there would have been a catch-up moment, right? Wouldn't have brought everybody square, but that's not what it was meant to do. It was supposed to bring people forward. That did not happen, so you lose ground. That's the 1860s. Then you move into Reconstruction. We didn't get the 40 acres and a mule, but we have the Freedmen's Bureau, the federal government in the South, making sure that the former slaveholders are not enslaving former slaves and allowing us to function. And we were getting out the mud. We were building whole communities, building businesses, taking care of ourselves and doing what we had to do. But then we had Black Flight that came out. The Great Migration came after that. And why did that happen? That was because the deal was struck by the federal government to remove the protections out of the South. And that pushed us right back into the new form of slavery, where they stole our land, they murdered our business owners, they murdered our politicians, they did all of these things. And that was when we fled and ended up in Michigan and Minnesota and places like that, New York, right? All that land was left behind that we had somehow managed to scrounge together. And for those of us who stayed in the South, they had the Jim Crow laws sitting there so that they could take your stuff that way. So the issue with America is it continues to obstruct because capitalism requires a bottom class. It requires it. So we were relegated to that position. Now, here's where a lot of Black folks who don't know some things are going to kind of perk up. We're largely irrelevant at this point, folks. So at this point, they have a new bottom class. That's the Latino community. So now they are being disappeared into the prison system, right? They're being killed and prosecuted and chased for drug issues and stereotyped for all of that. They are now who we were, but we are still not where we needed to be because of the obstructions that I just laid out to you. So what do you do with a population that you no longer need their labor and you do not want to be citizens? The only thing you can do is kill them and warehouse them. Where are our young men? Being killed in the streets or warehoused in prison. What do you hear from the police? We lock them up, you let them back out. So now all of a sudden, instead of just locking them up, you're killing them. So we are in a really bad position, folks. Black folk, I wish we had paid more attention over the last 30 years, because now the only way I see coming out of this is we have to build these temporary alliances with people who don't give a fuck about us. But if we don't at least do that, the path for us is very clear. We will become just like the Native American. We will be here, but we'll be a shell of who we are. Pushed into the shadows, abused, and no one cares. The indigenous people of this country, those who cannot pass as white, catch hell, and nobody blinks an eye. That's where we're headed. So it's this whole thing, and then I'm not going to get into the other stuff. But yeah, it all comes together, man. It all comes together. It all plays into the same pot.
All right, let's move on to the last two videos. So let's go ahead and get the elephant out of the room, because I done heard it several times over. That why we complain about it, why the Black community complain about the crime bill, the war on drugs, and anything else. Why is the Black community complaining about it when we're the ones that asked about it? just like everything else that the black community say, you twist exactly what we was asking for.
Some people pushed back against the criticism of the war on drugs and the subsequent consequences of mass incarceration by saying that Black Americans supported it. But that sort of take is rooted in kind of misremembering the past. As the scholars Elizabeth Hinton, Julili Kohler-Hausman, and Veshla M. Weaver have written, calls for tough sentencing and police protection were paired with calls for full employment, quality education, and drug treatment, and criticism of police brutality. It's not just that those demands were ignored completely. It's that some elements were elevated and others were diminished. When Blacks ask for better policing, legislators tend to hear more instead.
Get it? Do you get it? We asked for something. You heard what you wanted to hear. And I can't come up with a better analogy of what old boy said. We said better policing. Better. You heard more.
And they still hear more.
And you still hear more. And you're still throwing money for more.
Now, I'm not a police abolitionist. So for those out there who like to say that we need to get rid of the police, I'm not with you guys. I could probably ride with you to an extent because you're heading in the right direction. But no, we don't need to abolish the police. I do think we need to severely change them, which is what is being put out there, right? Like in my view, you would no longer have as many street cops because they don't do nothing anyway, right? They're half the time they're contributing to the crime because they're so poorly paid that they make money doing dark stuff anyway. What I would rather see is you got traffic cops, you got your drug interdiction cops, the ones who travel the highways trying to catch some things. Everybody will become more specialized, right? You'd have your SWAT type people. You have the people who do the social work and mental health interdiction, right? And you can be the same cop doing multiple of those things. Be trained for it. I don't give a rat's ass, but specialize these people so they're not just wandering around bored trying to find, gut ideas of how to make a community safer. Because the gut's going to tell you, well, if we just scare everybody, they'll behave better. And that's not how it works. Because if you scare people, they fight back. That's what happens. So, yeah. But yeah, the police, they're part of the problem. But I think the police also get a bad shake because we're so focused on them that we don't even look at the district attorneys and the judges. Like, they're above reproach. You want to talk about qualified immunity. Police have qualified immunity, which allows them to pretty much get away with most anything. But the district attorneys, the prosecuting attorneys, and the judges, they have absolute immunity. It does not matter what they do to you. You can't do anything to them. The worst that can happen is they can lose their job. There is no criminal consequence to anything they do. And that's not me saying hyperbolic stuff. That's the rule.
No, that's so the worst you
there's
can
a
do
lot of stuff that need to be worked on.
And look, here's the funny thing about it. The worst you can do is fire them. The best you can do is rehire them. Seen it.